Welcome to DucBloke Tuning and Finding the Sweet Spot. Grab a cup of coffee and like and subscribe. And welcome back to DucBloke Tuning, Finding the Sweet Spot. Today I don't have IMs to show you. Today I have 5 Dongle DACs that I want to compare and show you what I learned. Basing this against my DX320Max Ti that I use for a lot of the tuning that I do because I believe it has the cleanest sound. So iBasso has a very good DAP. They have very good DAPs. I'm going to be showing you 5 different DACs, so Dongle DACs. The DC Elite, also by iBasso. The Nunchaku, also by iBasso. The FiiO KA5. This is made for them by Jade Audio. A friend of mine loaned this to me. I've got it right here. And then I have the EPZ TP35 Pro. This was sent to me by EPZ. Thank you very much, EPZ, for all you do and for sending this out to me gratis so that I could check it out and compare it against what's on the market. And then also the Fosi Audio DS2, which I just went on a trip and I gave it away. So I give a lot of the stuff that I have away to friends and family. So that is now with one of my friends. I don't need to have it here to show you what I need to show you about what the differences are between these 5 versus, let's say, a full-blown DAP. So first things first, thanks, shout out to Bloom Audio and Matthew over at Bloom Audio. He sent me the DC Elite and the Nunchaku, and I got to use these for about a month. So I had them on me. I've got to travel with them, plug them into my Android phone. I use the Google Pixel 9 Fold, so I use these on my Fold. I also use these plugged directly into my DAP. So anything with Android, it was easy to use. The FiiO KA5, I've still got that right here. This was loaned to me by Johnny V. He's one of my friends, local friends. He makes these beautiful stands. So here's one of the stands that he makes. Another one here. It's got my DucBloke on it. So if you're interested in one of these stands that he does, reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with him. He does some pretty cool 3D printing stuff, and you can make a face plate that sort of matches what you want. Anyway, enough said about the stands. Reach out to me if you need that. Again, EPZ sent me the TP35 Pro, and then I bought the Fosi DS2 with my own money off of Amazon some time ago, over a year ago. So let's get stuck into comparing these. First, let's talk about this DAP. And they're numbered. It's over $3,000 to get one of these DAPs. It's made out of titanium, not that that makes the sound any better. It does make it a little bit lighter because if it was made out of stainless steel, it would be very, very heavy. It is, and I've compared it against other DAPs. I've got a FiiO M17 here. I think this is a phenomenal DAP as well. It's much more powerful than that DAP, but the sound quality isn't as good. And the reason the sound quality is so good on this is because of the room chips that this has in it. It has dual DAC chips, and those are the BD34301 EKV chips. There's 4 of them, so you've got 2 in each side, so that's the right, that's the left, and you can enable that double chip setting in the DAP, and this gives you the absolute cleanest sound you can possibly get. And that's what I need when I'm tuning, is I need to take away all the variables that there could possibly be, and this is what does it for me. Now, what they've done in the DC Elite, which is just here, this is the top of the line iBasso DAC, Dongle DAC, is they use that same chipset. They don't do a quad chip, but they use the same chipset in that DAC, and it does reproduce the music pretty close to what this does. It's not the same, but it's pretty close to what this does. Then the Nunchaku is different again, where you have an A/B class DAC as well as a tube DAC. So it has 2 Raytheon tubes in it. We'll get into that in the specifications a little bit further. And then but if you don't use the tube side of it, if you just use the DAC chips, it has the same chips as the rest of these. And we'll show you that side by side. It really is the same, but this does have a lot more features and a lot more power. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So these are the 2 that came in from iBasso. Thank you again very much to Matthew over at Bloom Audio again for sending these over. So the DC Elite on the left, that's this one just here, is considered to be one of the best in the industry. And it is, and that's because it uses the Rune chip, the same one that is in this high-end DAP that I use. And then the Nunchaku on the right is considered to be the best tube Dongle DAC. And this uses the 2 Raytheon JN6418 tubes in it, and it really does make a difference when you switch it over to the tube side. I love it. So but I'll show you the final ranking at the end of the video. When you look at the FiiO, now FiiO's a great company. Again, I've got a couple of DAPs as well. I think they make excellent products, and this is no exception. It's an older unit, but it's still holding its own, and for several different reasons. The FiiO KA5, which again is made by Jade Audio, is exceptional at its price point. So it's just over $100. I think it's $110. We'll show you that in a later slide. But the thing that is exceptional about this is it has the same PCM rate as the iBasso units, which is the 32-bit 768 kilohertz. It's twice as much processing as the other lower end Dongle DACs. So there is a separation in what this is. This is probably the middle of the road. Out of the 5, this fits into the middle slot. It also it works with the FiiO Control app on your phone or on your computer, and it has a display. And we're going to talk more about the display and which ones have a display and which ones don't, and why that's important. It works with both iOS, Mac, and Mac, as well as Android and Windows. So it's very ubiquitous as far as where you can plug it into, but all of these really work with all of those different platforms. Then we go over to this one right here, which is the TP35 Pro. Again, it uses this CS43198 DAC chip, which is common in 4 out of the 5 DACs that I'm about to show you. It uses a light system, and I'm going to show you the features of that light system. And there's a little scale over here. I'll pop that up so you can see it a little bit closer. That shows you what the lights mean. So the green light tells you that that the bit rate has gone up from 44.1 and 48 up to 88.2 and 96. Then if you see it cycle up to a blue light, then you know that you are at between 176 and 192. It shows you how fast the bit rate is on this unit, and it's really bright. So this is an easy way, if you're using Power Amp, to make sure that you're getting the correct bit rate for the song quality out of Power Amp. And I'm going to do a little bit of a demo for you right now. Now I'm going to show you one of the frustrations that I had with getting different dongle DACs to cycle up to the highest bitrate possible for the song, to match the song. So if you look at what I have here, is I've got a song that is 192 kilohertz at 24-bit. And this is Above the Clouds by Paul Weller. So it says 24-bit, 192 kilohertz. When I plug this in, I get a red light. If I go to the list for the EPZ TP35 and I look at red, there's red, it says that if this is on, I'm running at 48. So this thing is cycling down to a quarter of the file rate. If I close out Power Amp and I open up UAPP instead, and I use the same song in UAPP, I'm going to go to Above the Clouds. There it is. Look what happens. All of a sudden I get a blue light, and the blue light is indicating I'm running at 192. This is the same file from both players, and I can't get Power Amp on my phone to cycle this up, but I can on my DAP. That's one of the frustrations that you're going to run into, depending on your source, is how fast it'll run. But now let's see what happens if I take the same dongle DAC and plug it into a DAP. So here's my DAP, same exact song on the DAP, Above the Clouds, plug it in. I'm in Power Amp, and now it's cycling up. It's the exact same settings, and it's cycling up. So you can see that the DAP in Power Amp works better with different dongle DACs. If I close out Power Amp and I go into UAPP, here's UAPP. I go into the same file for Paul Weller. I go Above the Clouds, play Above the Clouds, and in UAPP it's also blue. Now I've got the same dongle DAC. It cycles up to 192 in Power Amp and UAPP on my DAP, but it won't do it on my phone. But UAPP works better. And I do like UAPP better as an application. I don't like the interface as much as I do Power Amp, but as far as the sound quality that's reproduced and how well it is able to work with multiple devices, I think UAPP is a better. This is the Fosi DS2. There's also a DS1. I've given both of these away, and they are excellent. They're just really simple. They make great sound products. Fosi makes great sound products that just work, and they're always very simple. And there's nothing flash about the aesthetics. It's gray. It's an aluminum case. nice. It's got volume controls up and down. It's got a light system as well that tells you which file system is actually playing at it, how fast that file is. As far as the chipset's concerned, it's exactly the same. So the CS43131 is the same chipset that's in the FiiO and the EPZ, only it has an integrated amp. So they call it a different chip number, but it is exactly the same DAC chip, just to be clear. Now we're going to take a look at the side-by-side of all 5 of these Dongle DACs. Starting from left to right, most expensive to least expensive, we're going to talk about the DC Elite. And again, this is using that same Rune chip that the DX320Max Ti uses. It has a PCM of 32-bit 768 kilohertz. So this is the sample rate that it's able to achieve. This is what PCM is. So it's phase code modulation. It's the method of converting the analog signal into a digital signal or vice versa, and representing the raw uncompressed audio data. That's what PCM does. And if you have a 768 kilohertz ability versus a 384, which is these two over here, then you have twice as high the sample rate. The DC Elite is twice as good at this than the TPZ TP35 Pro and the Fosi DS2. And it should be, because it costs a lot more, like 8 times more. And then you have the DSD rate. DSD is the direct stream digital. This is a Sony protocol and Philips. And you can see right here that the DSD rate goes up to 512 on both the DC Elite and Nunchaku, and then it drops down to 256 on the FiiO, the EPZ, and the Fosi. But let's talk a little bit more about the iBasso DC Elite. It also has the ability to do coax out. You don't have to just do the digital audio to analog conversion. You can actually do digital straight through it and still maintain the 32-bit 768 kilohertz bit rate. The other 4 don't have that ability, so they don't have coax out. My DAP has coax out as well, so that's kind of a cool feature. You have an output power at 3.5 for the plug of 162 milliwatts, and you have an output power of on the 4.4 plug of 280 milliwatts. Now the thing that really sets the Nunchaku apart from everything else, and that's why I've highlighted it just here. The Nunchaku does everything that the iBasso DC Elite does, except for the coax out, but it also gives you 450, it's AB class DAC, and then if you change that to the tube amp, all of a sudden you get a mind-blowing 525 milliwatts of power out of this at 32 ohms. So it's way beyond all of the others. It's twice as good as anything else on this list as far as how much power delivery. And when it comes to things like the Grand Maestro from Fat Freak, these need an insane amount of power. So these aren't going to sound good on any of these Dongle DACs except for the Nunchaku, because it's able to drive such a difficult IEM. Although most IEMs are not this difficult to drive. Most of them can be serviced by what you have here. But just so you know, if you're after power, the Nunchaku is your pony on this. Then when we scroll down here, the output impedance, the only one that states the output impedance at being 0.2 ohms is the DC Elite. So it's got an incredibly low output impedance, which means if whatever the impedance is of the IEMs that you're using, it's not going to change, let's say, the parametric Q very much. If you have a high output impedance, it will actually change the frequency response. And that's what I actually use my K19 over here when I'm taking my measurements on my coupler, because it has an incredibly low output impedance, and I'm able to maintain a very good squig when I'm doing my measurements. So that's really important. And when I reproduce that on my DAP, I also have really low output impedance. But when you have cheaper Dongle DACs, they're not going to state what that is. It could be an ohm, it could be 2 ohms, which would be really bad. So you really want something that's going to be below 1 ohm. And then you have a signal to noise ratio. So that's how much signal strength do I have, and how much noise do I have, and what is the dB level between them. All of these are good. All of these are really great, actually. But believe it or not, the DC Elite has the worst out of these at 117, whereas the others are around 130, and that's no surprise because they all use the same chipset. And then when you look at the KA5, what is it able to do that the more expensive iBassos are able to do? It's able to do that 32-bit 768 kilohertz bit rate. But then it cycles down just to be like the other cheap ones at 256 on the DSD. It also has a power output on the 4.4 of 265 milliwatts, which is close to what the DC Elite is putting out. And the other two, your EPZ TP35 and your Fosi DS2, they only operate up to 384 kilohertz on PCM. They have 256 is the maximum DSD. And here's the disappointment on the TPZ at 3.5 plug. You only get 65 milliwatts of power. So if you're using a 3.5 plug and you have an IEM that needs a bit of power and you're using that size cable, this is not going to drive it. On the 4.4, you're able to get up to 150 milliwatts, but it is the lowest in the list. And then the DS2 is able to get to 170 milliwatts. Okay, let's look at the build. So what do you get? So the iBasso DC Elite, you get titanium alloy. So the case is made out of a titanium alloy. The Nunchaku is made out of alloy, so I assume it's aluminium. It's anodized red in this case. There's a few different colors to choose from. And then you look at the others, and they also have aluminium or aluminum cases on them. And then leather cases. So you get leather cases with the DC Elite and the Nunchaku. You can swap between them. There's the leather case just here. You can see the leather case. It just slides in and out of it, holds it. It's quite a firm leather case. It's quite premium. And then my buddy who sent this to me, Johnny V, there's the FiiO. He must have bought this aftermarket, because when I looked to buy one of these, it doesn't come with a leather case. So he must have found the leather case separate, but it's got a nice little leather case that it slides into to protect it. When we look at the displays, the only two that have displays are the Nunchaku and the KA5 out of this list. The DC Elite, even though it's the most expensive one, doesn't have a display. It has a little light on its side, but it doesn't have a display. And then you have the others that have the light systems with the LEDs that change color to tell you how fast the bit rate is. And guess what? The DC Elite doesn't have the light system to tell you how fast the file is that's running on it, and it doesn't have a display. You have to trust that it is actually running at the bit rate that it says it's running at. The only thing it will tell you is whether it's running DSD or PCM. It is not gonna tell you, but I suspect it's such good quality that it is probably running the exact bit rate that you set it at. But just know that because it doesn't have a display and because the light system that's on the side of it, you're not gonna know. As far as software goes, the iBassos will work with UAC, as will my DAP if I plug it into something. FiiO Music, and the FiiO Control app, the FiiO units will work with that as well. The TPZ works with, I believe there's a software package for this. I've got it on the slide that it works with, but it's a third-party software package. The Fosi DS1 doesn't have any software packages that it works with. So let's talk about power amp and UAPP and what I listened to and what I heard. So this is the proof in the pudding. I used my Alpha Omega Omega for the test. So I used the same IEM for everything, and anyone who's following my channel knows that this is one of the best IEMs in the world, and I wanted something that would reproduce crystal clear sound, so I chose my Omega. On my DX320Max, and this is using the PEQ and not using the PEQ, and I'll explain that a little bit later, it was pretty perfect on all 6 of the songs that I listened to. When I jumped over to the DC Elite, I didn't get as much detail here. It still had great detail here, but not as much. It says detail great, slightly bright, and then it said slightly less detail here, slightly less detail, and then less detail and a little bit bassy. But I also noted that this was slightly bassy on the 320Max Ti as well. And then next one over is the Nunchaku. This is where when I engaged the tube amp, I was getting a buttery warm sound on it. I really liked that on the PEQ setting especially. So let me explain. I actually prefer the DC Elite un-EQ. Once it's EQ'd, it's as good as it can possibly get. I jump over to the Nunchaku, and I really like how buttery it sounds, because it does change the sound signature and make it feel much warmer. I really liked that. And then great detail, slightly warm, buttery, but less detail. Smooth, not as wide, so the stage wasn't as wide, and it had better gain than the others, because again, this goes all the way up above 500 milliwatts. Again, another one, smooth, not as wide, better gain, and then smooth, bassy, and good detail. Then I jump over to the FiiO KA5, and this is neutral. It was very neutral in its sound, not as hard hitting. And then on the next song over, it was more holographic than the TP35 and the DS2. It was neutral, but not as detailed as the others. It was warm, it had less detail and good gain. It was slightly sibilant on this song by Steve Miller Band, and then it had less detail. And then the final one, it was warm and it had a little bit of masking, so I wasn't getting the detail out of it that I was getting out of, let's see, the iBasso unit. Now I jump over to the TP35 Pro. It was slightly sibilant on the first song. I thought it was about 90% of what the DX320 was giving me, and it wasn't as wide on the next song. Again, about 90% of what I was getting out of the DX320 The next song, it was compressed and had less detail. Next song was less wide and warmer, but sibilant. And then the last song was warm and again had masking. Finally, over to the Fosi DS2, it was slightly warm and flatter. It was what I would call about 92%. So it was ever so slightly better than the TP35. It had less detail and was a little bit warm. It was neutral with less detail, but it had good gain on this song. And then it was sibilant and had less detail. And then the last box in the lower right, it was warm and bassy. That's my readout across 6 songs, comparing these against each other. So here's my wrap up and the final winner, and I'll blow this up, the scale up so you can see it a bit better. Okay, so the DC Elite starting on the left. I thought the performance without PEQ was the best out of all 5 of these. I thought the Nunchaku was excellent in its tube amp mode, not in its standard DAC mode with the CS43198, which is the same as the others. It really did sound very similar to the other 3, but that tube amp really sets it apart. And then the others are very good, very good, and very good. And then the performance with PEQ. I thought that the DC Elite was excellent, but I really liked the tube mode. So that was the best one with PEQ, and I listen to things with PEQ, so I would actually prefer to have the Nunchaku. And then the others were very good, and very good. And then the cost. The DC Elite is $449, so that's why I have it in yellow. It's not the winner there. The winner, the cheapest ones, are the TP35 Pro and the Fosi DS2 at about $61 and $60. So they are by far much cheaper. If you're on a budget, they're decent units for you to look at. And then if you look at the KA5, which has a display, it's 110. Okay, so which one had the cleanest sound? The DC Elite had the cleanest sound. The Nunchaku was number 2. The KA5 was number 3, tied for number 3 with the TP35 and the DS2. Which one had the best performance rank? Best performance rank I would give to the Nunchaku. Why? Because it sounds best with PEQ, and it has twice as much gain capability, which means you can drive just about any IEM, and it's a tube, and it gave me that warm, which is something I don't have in my DAP. So I thought that's why it would win the best performance rank. And then which is the best value for money? Well, I'm going to give that to the FiiO, because the KA5, because it has a screen, you can see exactly what bitrate you're running at. It works really well. It looks great, and it's only $110. And it had really good output. So the output power on it, I think, was around 265 milliwatts in the 4.4, which means it can drive just about any of these IEMs. Much better output power than the other 2 cheaper ones. So I would give that the best value for money. If you're trying to spend around $100, get the FiiO or get something comparable from FiiO. And then if I look at the rank out of 10, I'm going to get a 9 out of 10 to the Nunchaku. I'm going to get an 8 out of 10 to the DC Elite. And the reason that it doesn't get a higher score is it doesn't have a screen, doesn't tell you how fast it's running. With PEQ, I prefer the Nunchaku. And then 7 out of 10 for the KA5. Again, I think it's really good value for money. You get a 6.5 for the TP35 Pro, because I like its light system and being able to tell you exactly what file rate you're running at. And then the Fosi DS2 is a great budget dongle DAC at $60, and it gets a 6 out of 10 from me. So why? Cleanest reproduction, titanium case, low output impedance on the DC Elite. Nunchaku, added warmth, good display, tons of power. It says tons of power. It's tons of power. The KA5, excellent output power for the money, and 768 kilohertz on your PCM, and it has a great display. And then the EPZ, it looks good, its size is nice and small, it has very good sound. And then last is the simple to use DS2, lots of power on the 3.5 setting as well, and it has really good sound. So that's my wrap up of dongle DACs. I don't need to use dongle DACs because I've got a great DAP, and I don't mind putting them in my pocket when I travel. I'd much rather do that. But if you're on a budget, these are 5 to consider, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe to the channel. We're growing. And with that, DucBloke out.